Welcome to the Horace Mann League's podcast series. This program is dedicated to superintendents, professors of education, association leaders, and others who believe the common public school is the cornerstone of our community and our democracy. My name is Jean Collins DeWeese. With me today is your host, Jimmy Minnetonka.
Welcome to the Horace Mann League Podcast series, where we explore the ideas, leadership, and people shaping public education. I'm your host, Jimmy Minnetonka, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by David Law, the Superintendent of Minnesota's Minnetonka Public Schools. David is also the president of AASA, the School Superintendents Association, which is the nation's premier organization representing more than 13,000 school system leaders. David brings more than 3 decades of leadership in public education, having served as superintendent in 2 Minnesota school districts. In addition, he is also a past president of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. So with that, David, thank you so much for being a guest on the program.
Jimmy, thank you for having me on the conversation. It's good to be visiting with you again, and there's a great story to tell.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on being named president of AASA. This is a tremendous honor and a testament to your leadership and commitment to public education. What does this role mean to you personally, the Minnetonka community, and equally as important, the broader AASA family?
It's an honor. The presidency and being selected by my peers across the country to take this opportunity to be the voice of leadership with AASA, it's humbling. It's an incredible opportunity to connect with school leaders across the country, to learn together, to support each other. It fulfills a dream of being a supporter of public education on the national level at a time when it's probably critical to have that voice. In Minnetonka, for the Minnetonka community, I'm very fortunate to have a supportive school board that sees the value of being a leader in education. I inherited this role from a longstanding superintendent who took a lot of pride in developing high-quality programs and excellence for our community, and my board has continued that mindset in allowing me this opportunity to serve at this national level. For the AASA family across the country, it's an opportunity to listen to leaders, to pull together common messaging, both to support the professional development that leaders need at this point in time, and to advocate on behalf of students and staff and communities across the country about the needs of public education.
And why is that common messaging so important?
For a long time, just in my personal experience, people assumed that the public knew and appreciated what was happening in public education and that it was a value to our communities. And over time, that confidence in public schools has eroded, and there's a need to double down in sharing the amazing things happening in public education. We are forward thinking. We are anchors in communities. We are visioning for what the needs of our students are moving forward, and we are partners with our community. And those messages can't be shared enough times.
Speaking of anchors, at AASA's National Conference on Education earlier this year, you said good captains embrace flexibility, make real-time decisions while keeping their crews engaged and motivated. So let's break that down if we could. First, start with embracing flexibility. What does that look like for a superintendent in practice?
For me, embracing flexibility means understanding that we are constantly evolving as school systems. And we are a function, we're an extension of our community, and we're also service to our students, connecting them to their future. And those things are constantly changing. As our communities evolve and age, we survey those community members and say, what are you hoping for out of your schools today? One of the things I laugh about in leadership is, maybe 20 years ago, there was this undercurrent, like a message, brick and mortar schools will be going away because parents will want to take advantage of virtual learning and virtual teachers. And yet, I always said those people have never closed school in a snowstorm because parents are never thrilled when school's closed. The pandemic forced us to revisit the importance of in-person learning. And now we offer a virtual learning experience in Minnetonka, but it's not even 1% of our community that takes advantage of that, even though they all could, because parents have said loud and clear, we value human interaction and direct instruction, and along with flexibility or student-centered learning. As superintendents, we have to acknowledge that we don't know today what we're going to need to know to do well in 10 years. We are constantly going to have this feedback loop between our community members, between our parents, our staff, and our students, and our larger community about what's next. And living comfortably in that ambiguity is going to help all school leaders thrive. That's the flexibility we need. And the political winds change also. In my 10 years in leadership, I started at the tail end of the Obama administration and some of those priorities, and now we're working under the Trump administration of those priorities, and they are very different, as we all know. And as superintendents, you need to be able to lead in any environment and do right by your kids and do right by your community.
You mentioned the term, what's next, which leads me to ask, how do you approach decision-making real time in moments of uncertainty?
School leaders today, in order to thrive, need to be as informed as possible, need to be thinking about what are the possible outcomes of a decision. We work with school boards. We need to inform our school boards. Here's a range of solutions, and then make a recommendation on the one that we think will be the best for our system and our students and our staff. And sometimes those decisions happen in minutes. And sometimes you have a board meeting or two to work through them. The toughest ones are the ones where partial information, and I'll give a very practical example. One day last year, we had power outage. A storm came through, and I was talking to a group of teachers in a building. During my presentation, I just put up my slideshow, and the power went out. And it was an elementary school. And not only did it go out there, but at another elementary school. Those teachers said, are we closing school today? And I said, well, I was able to articulate, here are the steps in that decision-making process as my phone was ringing and talking to operations people and transportation people. And with elementary students, they were on their way to school and their parents had left for work. So we had an obligation to keep those students supervised, certainly long enough for their parents to understand that school didn't have power and get them back. And what I told those staff was, it was very likely that by the time we made that decision, the power would be back on. And it was. At our sister school, we had the exact same information. We continued to wait to hold on to the students as we waited for the power to come back on. And sadly, at that school, the power never came back on. And both of those were real-time decisions using all the information we had. The schools were about 3 miles apart or 2.5 miles apart. We had the same information for both of them. We supported the school that never had power coming back on by shipping in hot lunches and making sure the plumbing worked so we could wash our hands in the toilets flushed and those things. But there was no certainty. There was just continued information gathering and feedback loops and communication. And then afterwards, I walked through that entire school and thanked all those teachers for teaching for a full day in the dark. And I had to laugh because one of the teachers said, that was one of my favorite days. I called it Deep Haven Unplugged. And we laughed.
As you approached each staff person, describe some of the reaction you received.
I went with the associate superintendent from Minnetonka, Dr. Amy Ledoux, and we walked to every door in that building. And the principal walked with us. And I just walked in and I said, hey, I'm sorry. We went the next Monday because we were busy that day with the operational side of things. We went the next week and said, I just want to thank you for sticking with your students last Friday without power. And some of them said, what happened last Friday? Like, they didn't skip a beat. And others were like, oh my gosh, that was the hardest day. And for both of them, we said, we appreciate you. We know that was hard work. We're sorry that the power didn't come back on. We thought it was going to come back on. But sometimes owning the decision, being face-to-face with people is what it takes. And that was part of the decision-making process, knowing that that was a potential outcome.
Your tenure as AASA president began in July, and talk about some of your top goals and priorities, not only for AASA, but also for strengthening and supporting public schools nationwide.
I mean, that's a great question. One of the great opportunities I had a year ago in my president-elect year was to work with leaders across the country, thinkers, not just in K-12 public education, but in post-secondary and in our business communities, talk about what does the path forward look like for public education. And AASA came up with a guiding document called the Public Education Promise that really is intended to work in every community in the country, giving school leaders and school boards things to consider as they're working to improve. And there's 5 pillars in the Public Education Promise. It's student-centered learning, it's real skills for real life, high-quality workforce, community partnerships, and measuring what matters. And being part of that work made me realize how important it is. And each area has got a series of questions to ask yourself about what do we know about our community and our students, and what does this mean for us? As a trial run, I took that document, I met with my school board in Minnetonka, and we put up that metric, that guideline, and looked at our goals for the year, and it made us feel pretty good that we are doing a lot of the right work to move ourselves forward. But one of the things I'm looking forward to over my year is to help leaders across the country. I gave the analogy about being a good captain and embracing flexibility. One of the things that good captains do is chart the course and empower the crew. And this Public Education Promise document is the map that chart the course. It's exciting to have that opportunity during my presidency to share that information. So as I've been visiting superintendents across the country, I've been sharing that information and saying, this is a great tool to anchor your community on what's important for your students.
Absolutely. And kudos to you and the AASA staff for coming up with that document. Is it available online on the AASA website?
Certainly. You can find it on the AASA website. It's certainly available. It was shared at the National Conference on Education last March in New Orleans. We are sharing it broadly across the country with state associations. I'm actually speaking to the Minnesota superintendents about it in October at our fall conference. I talked in South Dakota at their summer gathering. I'm taking a chance to share this information because I really think it has the potential to reinvigorate confidence in public education and school leaders doing the right things for their community and their students.
Fantastic. And it's called Public Education Promise. And the AASA website, of course, www.aasa.org.
That's correct.
So you'll be at your state conference in October. That's the Minnesota Association of School Administrators Conference. I'm sure you will have conversations with superintendents statewide, as you have been doing nationwide. Talk about what they're thinking right now.
We just had a back-to-school event hosted by the Minnesota Department of Education and the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, and I had a chance to visit with over 100 school leaders across our state. We're constantly in a state of matching our resource to our priority. Across the state of Minnesota, literacy, and across the country, literacy has been a big effort to just raise the level of, or the percentage of students that are capable of accessing all of our course areas with literacy skills, with reading skills and communication skills. Minnesota had some legislation passed called the READ Act, and we are all thinking about literacy probably to a district, moving that initiative forward. We're also thinking about this shift to trying to get more real opportunities for our students that are relevant. We're at a time when the ability to partner with our community organizations and provide students with high quality experiences to help them get excited about their future. We're just at a new era, I think. It used to be that the concept of an internship was maybe for someone who didn't like school and was going to work in some employee opportunity. Now it's for our most engaged students, how can they really learn hands-on about how to apply what they're learning to something that is a pathway? Leaders across our state are thinking about how do we build those pathways, whether it be in manufacturing or in the business industry or in automotive or aviation. So you're seeing this idea of giving students real skills. And our communities are telling us, yeah, we appreciate that. Whether it, even blending in some of the life skills like financial management before they graduate or understanding your role as an engaged citizen. Those are being blended in a shift in education. But thinking about how to do the best we can in our given communities to give our students those opportunities more than just what they need to be proficient at the grade level. Behind that, I'm an optimist, but the reality is attracting people into this field and keeping people in this field. Now, as fewer students are entering post-secondary wanting to become educators, we need to double down on what an amazing opportunity public education can be.
It sounds like you're talking about the creation of some sort of apprenticeship program.
There are states across the country are creating apprenticeship programs to bring people into education. There are two avenues for that. Some of that is bringing our students, and exposing them to the education opportunity. And the other part of it is attracting people from other career pathways back into public education through a variety of innovative pathways. And both of those, sort of your grow your own, whether they be people who are in education support role in some fashion and saying, hey, you like working in public education? How about this? Or then other pathways where community experts can use their expertise in a content area and come into public education. And those types of partnerships are happening across the country.
Well, let's talk more about partnerships and whether with community groups, higher education institutions, the business sector, which are essential for innovation in public schools. What other examples of partnerships have you seen locally or nationally that are making a real impact?
There are so many incredible partnerships. I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine who's in Laverne, Minnesota. I happened to be driving by his school district. It's in southwestern Minnesota. And I was driving by, and Craig Offedal, the superintendent, and I popped in, and he was showing me around his campus, and it was beautiful. It's not what you think about a rural school district. It was this beautiful campus with a community-supported investment in an art center and in a wonderful alumni walkway. And out on the backside is fields where they grow crops. And they use the money from those crops to support all of the groundskeeping across the district. Talk about an amazing partnership. Land that's been donated to the district that can be used to harvest, generate resource, and give back to the school in a farming community. On one hand, you're teaching your students about the farming industry and agricultural industry. On the other hand, you got a partnership that's giving right back to the school district in practical ways. In Texas, President-elect LaTanya Goffney talking about partnerships with communities and healthcare industries to serve the needs of underserved communities by generating healthcare opportunities and career pathways. Just incredible. A lot of them are community specific, but here in Minnetonka, we've got a thriving aviation community in Minnesota with our Minneapolis and St. Paul Airport. Over the next 10 or 20 years, the need for people in the aviation industry to work in all aspects of it, from mechanical to service on the ground to pilots in the air, it's incredible. We have the good fortune of starting an aviation program where over 3 years, students can get their ground license and be ready to do in air. In that program, we have partnerships with local aviation companies that give our students their first flight experience at an incredibly reduced price. CEOs of airlines come and speak to our students. Those types of partnerships about a need in the community, an opportunity in our school system, and reinventing what our courses look like are just happening all over the country.
What sounds like if a student wishes to someday become an airline flight mechanic or an engineer of some sort, this kind of program is tailor-made for him or her.
Exactly. I tell people all the time, there are 2 life lessons to learn about taking some of those experiential courses. I went down and visited on a first flight opportunity when one of the first years our aviation students took a first flight, and I had the benefit. They will go out in pairs, one student in the pilot seat, one student in the back seat, and an instructor. And they go up and they fly around for about 15 minutes, and then they land, and then they switch. And at the switch, I had a chance to see the students. And one student said, "I'm hooked. I want to be a pilot." And the other student said, "I am never going to be a pilot." And you know what? Both of those were incredible lessons because they spent almost nothing and learned that right there. Rather than going through 6 months of school at a post-secondary institution to learn that, they learned that in high school over a semester. But the person who was never going to be a pilot still got to learn there's a ton of careers in aviation I could still do to support this industry.
Oh, that's tremendous. Describe some other exciting initiatives going on at Minnetonka right now that you're most proud of.
Our comprehensive high school is constantly evolving to meet the future needs of our students. And so we've got these career pathway programs, both in straight into careers in a program called Momentum and straight into professional pathways in a program called Vantage that has everything from business analytics to, we have a class called physics and home construction. And what I'm seeing during my time, this is my 4th year in Minnetonka, is every year we get more and more interest from community industry, like some of the largest automotive businesses in the metro are using our automotive students to learn the business side of the auto industry to help them market better to future employees. And I had the chance to listen in to their career advisory group, like the people out in the field, and then talk to the students about the projects they're doing. And seeing these students shift from changing tires to the half a dozen different areas that are happening all the time at a large auto sales organization, whether it be sales or business or routine maintenance or just all the parts, and hear the students and see them light up saying, all these things. I had no idea there was all of this behind. One of our local community partners is a company called Youngstead that's got just a bunch of different automotive service shops. And they are as invested in our students as our teachers, I think. Those community partnerships and those programming pieces are exciting for me as a superintendent because I always say the most fun place to stoke a fire is where it's already burning. And when there's interest from students and there's interest from staff and there's interest in the community and our students are making connections that are going to take them well beyond high school, that's why we do public education.
As you look ahead, David, to the rest of your term as AASA president, what gives you the most hope right now?
Well, I'm meeting with other school leaders across the country, just good people. This is a role to support school leaders as we move forward, and just having interactions with my colleagues and talking with them, seeing their eagerness to do right by our kids and our communities makes me feel good. The stories of what's really happening in public education are so different than this narrative that circulates around about misunderstandings or misconceptions about public school. And our commitment is to tell stories, the real things happening in our schools that are amazing. And that gets me excited because they're everywhere. Rural schools, urban schools, suburban schools, there's amazing things happening in our schools. If you ask parents, there may be some skepticism about the state of education across the country, but when you hone down to their community, generally speaking, they're very happy with what the kids are getting.
Well, we have time for one more question, and that is, if you can provide one piece of advice to a new superintendent or an aspiring superintendent listening to this program, what would it be?
When you move into leadership, there's this little bit of wondering, like, do I dare ask my colleagues? I don't want them to think I don't know everything. And I have to tell you, I have some of my best friends in education are people I talk to a dozen times a week. I've been doing this for more than a decade in the superintendency in 2 different districts. And nothing reassures me more than having a 5-minute conversation with a colleague to say, hey, this is what I'm facing. This is what I'm thinking. Talk me through it. And it goes both ways. Reach out for help. Lean on your neighbors. And the other way around, for those veteran soups out there, if you have a new neighbor, be overly supportive. We don't want to lose good leaders in this business. Don't be afraid to take advice. Don't be afraid to ask for advice. This is an amazing field to lead in.
Well, that's a perfect way to conclude our program, David. Always a pleasure to speak with you, my friend. So thank you so much for sharing your time, your leadership practice, your vision, and being with us today on the Horace Mann League Podcast series.
It's an honor to be here, Jimmy, and it's great to visit with you again. I really appreciate you telling the story about public education.
We wish you all the best of luck, not only in Minnetonka, but in your role as AASA president, as we look forward to seeing the impact of your work in months to come. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in.
You've been listening to the Horace Mann League podcast series. Our members are committed to Mann's ideal that the public school is one of the central unifying influences in American life. All of our podcasts are listed on YouTube, as well as the Horace Mann League website, hmleague.org. We also invite you to join the conversation through social media by accessing #HMannLeague. Once again, thank you for listening.